Welcome to Goobertown Hobbies. My name is Brent, and I just traded the best mini in my collection for the best mini in Ninjon's collection. Let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, Confrontation, Kyrus, limited edition from 2006. Only 3,000 made, and this fellow is number 561. It's a quality single-piece cast, nothing bent or broken or fragile. The Rolls-Royce of mid-aughts white metal models. And he came with a mini rulebook for the game and some tokens. That's actually pretty cool, but we won't be needing those. I'm in it for Kyrus. Back in the before times, I visited John Ninus. He showed me his secret stash, and he allowed me to choose a model to remember him by. Kyrus was the obvious choice. I love the look of this knight. He's menacing, he's got a bit of motion to him, and he's different from a lot of the other stuff I work with. I got him primed black, and I'm keeping him on the square base that he came with. It's part of his charm. Before I started, I decided on a couple of materials and techniques that I wanted to experiment with. The first is Vallejo Liquid Gold. I finally ordered a bottle of this, and it just came in the mail. This is an alcohol-based metallic color. I'm using a cheap brush, and I have a bit of denatured alcohol on hand to clean it. This paint is very thin and runny, so it's a bit tricky to keep it where I want it. That being said, it has great coverage, it goes on smooth, and I'm really loving the way that it looks. Most of the other gold paints that I own have found ways to disappoint me, so I'm really happy to have this in my toolbox now. I'm getting the gold done first because it's a bit messy, but also because I want to know that this is gonna work before I get much further on the model. Eventually, I'll do a bit of shading and highlighting on the armor, but the nice stuff about this true metallic paint is that it already looks like metal. You can see how it really catches the light as I move it. This is a fine start to the paint job. It takes another big leap forward when I drop some black contrast paint into the visor slit. His smoldering eyes are back there somewhere, and this black wash sells the effect just fine. Kyrus here is a relatively simple model. The major color choices are his armor, his surcoat, and his cloak. I have it in my mind that he's a green knight, so let's make the surcoat green. A technique for cloth that I've become really interested in is cross-hatching. Starting with this black base coat, I'm using dark green to make a series of lines in one direction. Then I'll make a series of lines going the other direction. Eventually, the cloth will start to register as green, and that texture, in theory, will give the illusion of woven cloth. I've seen other folks make it work, so here we go. For the cross-hatching, I'm using this triad of Reaper greens. These are normally a bit thin for my taste, but for this purpose, I think they're perfect. This is one of those times where we're putting in the effort and having faith that it'll work out later in the process. I'm starting with dark green and then working towards layers of lighter green. I decided that the cloak was gonna be ivory colored, and since it's cloth, we might as well try this same cross-hatching method. I've got a series of Reaper bone colors, and I'll work up from black to a nice ivory. Later on, I may even add some stripes or something. We'll see how it goes. Many crosshatches were made. Many crosshatches. I don't have any skill at this yet, but I'm putting in the reps and painting bravely. I have faith that perseverance will lead to proficiency. The surcoat is starting to look pretty cool, but the cape is starting to look pretty bad. The chunkiness of my lines and the high contrast between the black and the ivory really isn't working. I may need to figure out something else for that cape. The green is pretty sweet though. I've worked up to a lighter green, and now I'm just hatching and stippling on the raised folds as a way of putting in the highlights on that cloth. I think the black and green is a better combination for this technique, and I also think the folds in the sculpt of the surcoat are helping us out a lot. Alright, the armor and the surcoat are looking good, but we gotta fix that cape. I covered everything with a dark bone color. We're gonna bury that failure deep down. Oh look, a furry hood. Isn't this fun? I started taking care of some of the little details on the model. There really isn't too much, just some chains, a belt, and a book on his hip. For the chains, I'm using Vallejo metal color. This is also new to my collection. It turns out that it has pretty good coverage, it's a bit runny, but it's water-based, and it's a bit easier to handle than the alcohol-based liquid gold or liquid silver. I think it looks pretty good. Now back to the cape. I tried stippling on a bit of lighter bone color. I still think a light color cape would work really well with a gold and dark green. Dot 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 dot. I got impatient and painted the cloak ivory. By now, the layers of paint are starting to add up, and I'm losing a bit of smoothness, but I do really like the feel of this color combo. Despite some stumbles on the cape, I'm still really enjoying this mini. Old Kyrus here is quite the character. Now, apparently Confrontation went out of production in 2010 when the company Rackham went out of business. I'm just learning about all this now, but scrolling through, they definitely had some great models. I'll be keeping an eye out for them. A lot of single-piece metal models look dated and goofy, but not Kyrus. My only complaint about this model is that the front view is so much cooler than the back view. His surcoat looks awesome from the front, but from the back, everything is covered up by that darn cape. I really wanted for him to be a green knight, but now on the back there's no green at all. Maybe I could find a way to put a bit of green freehand on the back of the cape. I went looking to see what iconography was part of Confrontation, and I found these wound markers that look pretty cool. These jagged claw lightning bolt things. They're iconic, they look dank, and they're way easier to draw than a dragon or a griffin or something like that. Using the same shades of green that I used on his front side, I started to draw this pattern on the back of his cape. This way, the most important colors from the front of the model will also be present on the back of the model. Then I thought the inside of the cape was looking a little plain, so I gave it 2 azure stripes. Then I changed my mind again and made the back of the cape azure too. While I was thinking about all this, I used some Nuln Oil to darken the shadows of the armor just a bit, and I also did a smidge of black lining between major color groups. And then maybe just a couple of red stripes to make him look fast. Sometimes the story for a character comes together while you're painting. Kyrus has a whole wardrobe of ugly capes. He's got the armor and the surcoat down pat, but he just can't quite find the right cape to complete his look. Every weekend he heads down to the Gap to check out the sales. Keep trying, Kyrus, your day will come. To finish things off, I'm using some liquid silver on the extreme edges of the armor. This is basically a lazy edge highlight, and it's gonna make the gold look just a bit shinier. For his base, he's getting some Agrellan Earth Crackle paint. I put that on nice and thick, and a few hours later, we've got a barren landscape. I gave this a wash with dark brown Agrax Earth shade to give it some extra shading and variety. When that was dry, I used some brown pigment to dirty up his boots and the bottom hem of the cloth. This ties Kyrus in with his surroundings. After a black base rim, our lad is looking pretty good. I was talking about viewing angles earlier. For Kyrus, his most photogenic angle is with this corner of his square base pointed right at the camera. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. This was a fun little project. First, I got introduced to a new line of old minis. Then I tried a bunch of different supplies and techniques, and several of them worked out quite nicely. My understanding is that this mini had been in John's collection since the very beginning of his hobby journey. It's one of the first models that he ever bought, just because he thought it looked cool. But he never found the chance to paint it up, and I was happy to take this burden from him. John is a bit of a goober, and he's an extremely talented painter. I gave him a model that had been living in my hobby pile for a while, and I think it may have been the rarest piece in my collection. The figure I gave John is so cool that I was intimidated to paint it, so I handed it off to a master. I'm looking forward to seeing how it turned out. Hopefully this little collaboration is a reminder that many of us have great projects lurking in our piles of opportunity just waiting for us to get started. Grab something fun, sit down at your hobby desk, and get to it. While you work, you can keep yourself entertained with Trapped Under Plastic. Thanks so much for watching this silly little video, and remember to paint bravely.